Good day, students. My name is Sanri Steenkamp, and I will be presenting the B.Ed Honours Degree in Education, Life Skills 3. Subject code is B.Ed LS311. Pass will be on all three examinations, which includes the supplement examination in November. I want you to take note of the fact that this is a very condensed, so please make sure that you read through the entire study guide and that you have a well-read and well updated and have knowledge about all the subjects and topics inside of your subject study guide. All right. Okay, so we will go through all 8 of the units. Unit 1, which is the policy features of the life skills in Namibia. Unit 2, select and related teaching methodology issues. Unit 2, which is the Unit 3, selected content of the junior secondary phase and related teaching methodology issues. Unit 4, selected content of the senior secondary phase and related teaching methodology issues. Unit 5, roles and responsibilities of the life skills teacher. Unit 6, the phases of evolution of the world of work and career counseling theories. Unit 7, the relationship of multiple intelligences with the life skills and career counseling. Unit 8, elements of the daily counseling classroom processes to develop life. So in Unit 1, we look at the domains of the current senior primary and secondary life skills syllabus. So there's 3 domains in the life skills syllabi. It's the career guidance, daily living skills, and personal social skills. So in the career guidance focus, we focus basically on study skills, career opportunities, and work ethics. The daily living skills focus on healthcare, family life, finances, and personal social skills focus on self-awareness, relationships. So the importance of young people do not really know. They do not have sufficient information regarding different careers, and very few young people are aware of their own strengths and weaknesses, or even their own personalities. So they also don't know the importance of choosing the right subjects in school that fit their personalities, would fit with the career that they want to do one day. Many learners don't know how to study. They do not know how to make summaries, or know how to study for their tests or examinations. They often don't know how to apply for jobs that they want to do, or how to apply for universities or colleges, and they need some assistance with that. And all of these things are covered in the life skills syllabi. A scheme of work is a flexible document that all teachers need in their subjects, and it's probably the most useful tool that a teacher can have in terms of the planning that has to take place over the year. It also indicates the target and completion dates and what assessment tasks need to take place over the course of the year. It can be developed and be used over several years. The target date on a scheme of work should correlate with the date on the year planner. It should indicate the work to be covered over all 3 domains each term. It is advisable that learners do some topics from all 3 domains in all 3 terms. The numbers of periods a topic might the scheme of work. So I downloaded the life skills subject from the life skills subject policy guide for grades 4 to 12. The scheme of work, this is an example of the life skills scheme of work, and you can find it in this life skills subject policy guide, which is available online. So please go and download it so you can see exactly what it looks like. All right, so it's a very simple form that you've. All right, I'm going to leave it there so you can just quickly have a look of what it looks like. You can see where you fill in the name of the teacher, what grade it is. So for each term, this where you fill in the domain, the topic, assessment task, the number of periods, the target dates, and the date completed as you go along. Very simple. Alright, so you can see that it's on page 12. Annex 2. Okay, so now we're going to look at the learner center. So the learner center program or paradigm is the instruction that changes from the teacher-centered and content-driven to learner-centered and learning process-driven. Learners are engaged in the learning experience, not only learn content, but they are also engaged in the process of how to learn and to develop lifelong learning skills in the lesson. The teacher becomes less of an instructor, and learners communicate and take responsibility for the learning process. So in a way, it sort of takes a little bit less energy, the teacher. So it gives the learner a bit more responsibility, and it takes more energy from the learner. This role changes from the one who has all the knowledge to that of being a learning mediator, who assumes the following roles. So the teacher becomes the designer or learning tasks and creator of a conducive environment that stimulates learning, a guide that works side by side with the learners, an evaluator of learner outcomes, and using the assessment to give feedback to learners to improve their learning process. So learners spend less time receiving instructions and information and more time engaging in learning activity, where you have the teacher-directed and learner-directed. So the teacher is a bit more of a facilitator in this way. Much more of an interactive process going on here, which makes the whole process more of a dialogue than a monologue. We now look at the importance of life skills as a senior primary phase subject. So children become sexually active at a very young age. Often engaging in sexual activities. Parents are often not aware that their children are sexually active, and probably also a little bit of ignorance from parents' side when it comes to sex education at that age. So need to be provided with information about sexuality, the consequences of being sexually active and being pregnant, as well as where to go for contraceptives when needed. They need to know about other health issues such as eating habits, how to take care of their bodies, and how to select good friends. Children also need to know about different subject choices, schools that will provide subject choices they are interested in, and what careers they might follow with their subject choices in secondary schools. Very few people care about the environment. Littering is seen everywhere. Breakouts of diseases often occur. I think at the moment we are very much aware of the hepatitis E outbreak that is going on, and that is because of this hygienic littering at the moment. So life skills is extremely important at all ages. Right, we move on to the spread and treatment. Young people get involved in sexual activities due to peer pressure or not having sufficient knowledge on how to protect themselves. They do not have the courage to ask their parents about sex and sexuality, and sometimes do not have the courage to talk to their children about sex and sexuality. With the exploitation of sex in the media, young people might get the idea that when you want to be important, you should have sex as soon as possible. Life skills teachers need to provide them in the right way, and they need to develop skills to protect themselves. They need to know how HIV is spread, the importance of taking medication on time, and not to do or use not to do or use when on ARVs, and the importance of going for testing and counseling. Contraceptives needs to be discussed, and the pros and cons of different contraceptives. Shortly going to talk about abortion, and it's important to also see Unit 4 as well. A study guide, as some of the subjects and topics in your study guide is repeated in different places. So when it comes to the exam or assignments, I can also mention we try to also mark it holistically or look at it holistically, as things will repeat in different places in your study guide. All right. So abortion is the termination, when you just look at the definition of it, is the termination of a pregnancy when the fetus is removed from the woman's uterus. A miscarriage is when the woman's body spontaneously aborts the fetus. So abortion is illegal in Namibia and has serious consequences, legally or physically and emotionally. Abortion is only legal in Namibia when the mother's life is in danger due to the pregnancy or father has a mental illness. So the reason for that would be that the mother and the father's, when the mother and the father has a mental illness, they will either not be able to take care of the child, and the chances of a mental illness being carried over to the child is extremely high. Because many mental illnesses, actually most of them, can be genetic. So the child might be born severely disabled. If the fetus has a mental illness, that can prevent it from having, it can create severe problems. If a woman was raped, or there is proof of incest. Incest is when family members have sex with each other. Illegal abortions, also called backstreet abortions, have extreme consequences. So the woman's cervix can become inflamed, leading to pelvic inflammatory disease, damage to the cervix lining due to tearing, and uncontrolled bleeding. This could probably lead to death at the end of the day if not treated. Psychological consequences is trauma, depression, and guilt, which can probably also lead to suicidal thoughts. When we move on to career guidance and setting goals in Unit 2, how to guide learners in setting goals. Start early, set the goal, define the goal. I just want to jump in here to say please go and read up in more detail about this. Define the goal, plan to achieve the goal, brainstorm, questions, be positive, learn from mistakes, evaluate the plans, visualize the goal, persevere, realize your strengths. Please take note that these goals takes place in these specific steps. So you cannot define the goal first and then set the goal. You have to set the goal and then define the goal. Okay. Some tips for teachers on assisting the students in setting their goals is to ask the learners what they want. Listen to the learners when they express their desires, so pick up on what they want and listen through listening. Strategize with them, so you need to talk about this, discuss with them small steps. So setting this out step by step. Do not tell them their goals or desires are unrealistic. So don't burst their bubbles. All right, we move on to the listening skills and barriers to listening. Listening is to hear and to understand what a person has heard. Not listening to a speaker is a waste. His or her time talking to someone, and the person who is supposed to listen wastes his or her time in not listening. So some barriers to listening is when people are interrupting the speaker. Noise is a barrier to listening. Another barrier is worrying. When you keep on worrying, you're not listening to the person speaking. When people speak in a different accent and you are trying to figure out what they are saying, you are not listening. Daydreaming or thinking about other more interesting things is also interfering with listening. We move on to bullying, which is still a major problem in Namibian schools. And the reason for that is that one of the major reasons is that bullying slips by because we have not defined what exactly bullying is. So many forms of bullying are simply accepted by teachers, by principals, and by school prefects. Many people who have been bullied while at school still feel the effects of bullying they received. Bullying causes numerous effects. So, short-term effects of bullying can be stress, depression, anxiety, anger, dropping out of school, feeling of worthlessness, and suicide. Long-term effects can be a constant feeling of worthlessness or insecurity, lack of trust in others, extreme sensitivity, mental illness, and revenge. We move on to Unit 3, and there we're going to look at intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And again, this is also discussed in Unit 4. Motivation can be seen as the desire to do things. Intrinsic motivation is something that comes from within you, like the word is saying, intrinsic motivation. It's also a sense of success for accomplishing the task. A disadvantage of intrinsic motivation is that efforts to foster intrinsic motivation can be special and lengthy preparation. Learners also differ and have different interests. It is important to know the learner's interest to build intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivator, when somebody or something serves as a motivator. So extrinsic is like exit, so it's an external thing. If you are promised a gift to pass, the gift is the external motivator. So your dad promised you a laptop if you pass your exams. That is your motivator. An advantage of an extrinsic motivator is that behavior changes occur and that it involves little effort or preparation. The disadvantage of extrinsic motivator is that it can distract the learner from learning the subject at hand. Often the rewards and punishment need to be escalated to keep. We move on to career guidance and mind maps. A mind map is a graphical way to help the structuring of information, and it is helpful to analyze, comprehend, synthesize, recall, and generate ideas. The information on a mind map is structured in a way that resembles how the brain actually works. Developing a mind map is an activity that is both analytic and artistic. It engages the brain in a rich way and is also fun. So here I have an example which you can also find in your study guide. And this is something fun to use in your classroom. You can use it for any subject. You can use it when you do exams, teaching your learners to learn for the exam. It's a very nice way to help learners to remember better, because they remember better when they can remember colors. They remember the words better and how to connect things. Like I mentioned in Unit 4, we talk again about motivation. So here we're just going to look at a few things about components of motivation. And it's called activation, persistence, and intensity. So activation involves the decision to initiate behavior, such as enrolling in the BED program. So activation and initiation, you can see how that fits together. No? So it's sort of to start something, to activate it. Persistence is to continue effort toward a goal, even though you might experience different obstacles, such as having to take care of your children while studying, driving long distances to attend classes. To persist requires you to invest time, energy, and resources. And intensity can be seen in your efforts, concentration, and vigor you put into obtaining your goal. For example, you follow your study timetable resources to get more information. If you look at that, the first letters is API. So you can remember API, activation, persistence, and intensity. So motivation. Unit 5, we look at the aims of the My Future is My Choice program that they use in schools. So the aim of that is to help young people to make informed decisions about their sexual health and lifestyle, to develop and improve their decision-making skills, to acquire skills to delay sexual activity, so to wait with that, to acquire skills to protect themselves from HIV, prevent unwanted pregnancies, to help them to find or develop their own values with respect to relationships, friendships, and the concept of love. And there are many more, so please make sure again that you read through your study guide. We move on to Unit 6, and there we're going to look at Gottfriedsen's proposed 4-stage model of career development during the childhood and adolescent years. So number 1 there, is the orientation to size and power, which takes place during ages 3 to 5 years. And during this stage, children tend to perceive people and things in simple categories such as big or small, and occupations as jobs to be taken by big people. So you just can imagine yourself when we think in terms of careers and small children aged 3 and 5. When they talk about big and small, and big people doing big jobs and small jobs. Even when they talk about school, they talk about going to big school. Okay. Orientation and sex roles, ages 6 to 8. During this period, children are able to think more concretely than the previous state. Their perceptions of the world, however, are rigid and dichotomous, and they often classify things, including occupations, as either good concept that becomes salient at this stage, their environment in terms of regard their own sex to be superior to the other. For example, if a girl perceives engineering to be a male occupation, she may eliminate being an engineer as a possible further career choice. So maybe a girl of 6 might think a boy should be a fireman and a girl should be a nurse. She will never in her life be a fireman in her head. And a boy might think he will never be a nurse because that's a girl's job. Okay, so ages 9 to 13 is more focused on social valuation. In addition to what is gender appropriate and inappropriate, the young adolescents develop a sense of what is valued by their peers. So we focus more here on the social valuation and the larger society. They configure occupations as symbols of power, social class, and status. Consequently, young adolescents eliminate from further consideration occupations that they are perceived to be either low, in other words, occupations that have unacceptable social standards, or difficult in occupational prestige. So here, maybe a doctor and a cleaner will be separated. Okay, so they will rather be a doctor than a cleaner, because the social status will be more important. Number 4 is the orientation to internal unique self, ages 14 and above. So in contrast with the previous stage, in which occupational alternatives are rejected based on aspects of one's self-concept that are external, adolescents at this stage are likely to shift their intentions to internal aspects of one's self-concept that are external. Adolescents at this stage are likely to shift their attention to internal aspects of their self-concept, like personality, interests, skills, and values. Through comparing occupational alternatives with these aspects of self, adolescents determine their occupational preferences are most suitable to them. The explorations, however, are confined to those occupational alternatives that may not be eliminated in the first 3 stages of career development. So it could be that some of the things may have stayed over from the first 3 stages, may still be there, but also some of the interests that. So if they also had an interest of being a nurse, it might come up. Maybe they are still a boy, but they have an interest in being a nurse, that may come back into play. Okay, so now we look at the components that make up attitude. Number 1 is the affective or emotional component, and number 3 is the behavioral component. So how we feel, how we think, and how we behave or act. 3 components that make up attitude: how we feel, how we think, how we act. Okay, so first one, how we feel, how the object, person, or issue makes us feel. When we attach emotions to your opinion that has been formed about people's objects, your emotional component comes into play. Cognitive component, when you form an opinion or perception about a person, object, or situation, the cognitive component comes into play. The opinion you form about the favorable or unfavorable, positive or negative. Behavioral component, when you attach a desire or behave or act in a certain way, you have attached to the opinion you have formed about a person, object or situation, the behavior component comes into play. Lastly, we look at the pillars of learning, or almost lastly, learning to know and learning to do. Learning to know is the type of learning that implies mastering of the instruments of knowledge themselves. Learning to know includes the development of the faculties of memory, imagination, reasoning, problem solving, and the ability to think in a coherent and critical way. A process of discovery which takes time and involves going more deeply into the information, knowledge delivered through subject teaching. It presupposes learning to learn, calling upon the power of concentration, memory, and thought, so as to benefit from ongoing educational opportunities continuously arising throughout life. Therefore, learning to know can be regarded as both a means and an end in learning itself and in life. Learning to do, on the other hand, implies the application of what learners have learned or known into practices. So this is the practical part. However, it goes beyond narrowly defined skills, developing for doing specific things or practical tasks in traditional or industrial economies. It calls for new types of skills, focusing more on behavior. Implies a shift higher order skills specific to each individual. Learning to do means, among other things, the ability to communicate effectively with others, aptitude towards teamwork, social skills in building meaningful interpersonal relations, adaptability to change in the world of work and in social life. Work and in social life. In Unit 8, we will look at the qualities of a life skills teacher, And I've listed some of them here. Please check your study skill. There might be a few more. So some of them is accountability, adaptable, caring, compassion, cooperative, creative, dedicated, determined, empathetic, forgiving, generous, grit, inspirational, joyful, kind, organized, brilliant, resourceful, trustworthy, and vulnerable.